This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All righty, there he is. Had to go turn on the AC. How you doing? Morning.
I am doing good. What a difference Big O that a week makes. I mean, we were sitting here and the sky is falling and Brooklyn destroyed them and they lost 4 in a row and the world is ending. And then you see this road trip in front of you and oh my God, they got to go to Boston, Chicago, and Toronto. And it was the best thing that happened to them. And they found themselves and they hit their stride. And their 2 wins, no matter what anyone else does, from winning the Eastern Conference regular season. They're back in a good place, and they got to rest some players also. So It really was a hell of a week.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, to finish it off last night with a bunch of guys on the bench, that was pretty awesome. And you didn't start off well either, by the way. Toronto got a nice little fat lead early on.
13.
I was talking about this before you came on. I thought Oladipo that was message time for him. The last salvo that he could fire and say, hey, don't forget about me. And he probably, Spo in quarantine, watching that had to start to think about a little something there.
It was message sent, but I'm not so sure it was message received for this reason. And I mentioned this in my Ask Ira at sunsentinel.com this morning. The NBA is not just about getting your best players on the court. It's getting your best combinations on the court.
Sure.
And what's worked for the Heat until last night was the spacing created by having shooters. To a lesser degree, Duncan Robinson, but certainly Gabe Vincent. Yes, Victor Oladipo was 6 of 9, but that was an outlier. The 6 3-pointers tied the most 3-pointers he made in a game in his career. So I think, remember, Jimmy Butler also was saying it's about the spacing. Well, Jimmy didn't play last night, so they didn't need to clear the lane as much for Jimmy's drive, penetration, post-up game. So I think Eric Spoelstra still has to look at it as, you know what? Before last night, when everyone played, it worked really well. And Big O, would Vic have gotten those shots, that much run, those opportunities, if Jimmy and PJ Tucker and Gabe Vincent and Dwayne Dedmon had all been in the rotation? Probably not. I think what Vic showed is this. If Jimmy gets a knick-knack injury or Tyler Hero gets one during the playoffs, and they're up 3-0, we're 3-1 in the series, fine. Here, Vic, finish it off for us. We'll rest the other guys. But I wouldn't say, matter of fact, I would say for sure, Vic is not a quote-unquote rotation player right now. That if you sort of had your, if you were playing some sort of a proposition bet and someone said Victor Oladipo's minutes over under 15 minutes per game in the playoffs, I still would go with the under.
Well, but at least now, with that performance, it's something that you have to think about if you're Spo, saying, because it is experience, and going into the playoffs, that's where the young guys are still kind of untested. So I'm just saying that had to have been at least some kind of a message sent, like, okay, listen,
it was,
I'm not
like
done.
I'm saying,
I'm not
it
done.
It was a message sent. And if you get a chance and go watch the video, I just posted a story at sunsentinel.com about this. Vic was very, I don't want to say abrupt, but curt in the post-game interviews when sort of the questioning was along the lines of, wow, you had a great game. And his answer was, no, I had a Victor Oladipo game. That's what I do. That's who I am. So he's still in the mindset that he's back in Indiana 3 years ago, which is fine. I want all my players to have ego. I want all my players to have what Eric Spoelstra calls a rational confidence. That's a good thing, Big O. You want that. But Eric Spoelstra has bigger decisions to make. He has to look at his overall team as his 17 available players and saying who meshes together versus who's individual. There are some playoff teams where it's just about the one-on-one game. Brooklyn is sort of that way. It's about as far as KD and Kyrie carry them. For the Miami Heat, it's a matter of that 9-man rotation getting together, gelling and grooving and carry them through. This is an ensemble team. This is not Vico in the Heat. This is not Jimmy B in the Heat. It's 9 across the board, so you never know who's going to lead you in scoring.
I guess Max Strus is solidifying that spot. That was a hell of a game by the guy yesterday. I mean, again,
he's a tough SOB to go scoreless in the first quarter and not let him get it down and to get the 15 points that first half rather, and then to get the 14 points he needs in the third quarter to turn the game and give the Heat the lead going into the fourth, look, that move has worked out fine. And he's a tough dude and he does other stuff. Which brings us back to the Orlando Alzugaray twice a week Acura Pembroke Pines report question. And yes, I'll answer it
already. That's
and I'll
over
answer
already.
it differently already. I don't know what they do about Duncan Robinson. And I know that Eric Spoelstra is going to say all this stuff about, oh, he spaces the floor and he provides shooting to let Jimmy, I understand all that. Big O, he's had a bunch of scoreless games. And there comes a point when those scoreless games reach 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you're getting nothing out of it. And I'm not so sure last night if Eric Spoelstra could have coached. He was in health and safety protocols. He could have honestly looked us in the face and looked into that Zoom camera and still said, well, Duncan did other things. He still did things beyond shooting. He wasn't really noticeable, and he wasn't really a factor. And this is a real question going into the playoffs. So when you have guys like Caleb Martin coming back, he had some moments. Caleb had some moments last night. And even to a lesser degree, Markieff Morris, he put up.
Forget moments. Forget moments. He's a better player.
Yes.
Flat out,
Yes.
way better player than Duncan Robinson will ever be. Because
Well,
Duncan
I don't know
will
about will
never
ever
be
be.
anything but a. No, he is what he is.
Maybe
Ira,
now, but Duncan Robinson the previous 2 years
he's a shooter.
had games that made everyone take notice. So, but it's interesting. So again, let's go back to our new starting lineup where you have Adebayo and Tucker and Strus and Butler and Lowry. Again, we know that Hero and Dedmon are going to be first two off the bench. I know that everyone, Big Yurt had 6 in a row. Well, good for Big Yurt. And it was nice, but Dedmon's the backup center, Big O. So we have 2 more slots in our rotation there. Is it Gabe Vincent? Is it Caleb Martin? Is it Victor Oladipo? Is it Duncan Robinson? So that's where you stand. To me, it's a 4-man game.
Oladipo just jumped Duncan Robinson last
in the
night.
ratings, might not have jumped Gabe Vincent and might not have jumped Caleb Martin. So I can say to you, okay, you have Dedmon and you have Hero as your 7th and 8th man. Maybe it's as simple as you have Vincent and Martin as your 8th and 9th man, 8th and 9th man, and that's where you stand in your 9-man rotation. So it's not an either or with Duncan or even with Vic. You have 2 other guys. So I think these last 3 games, as maybe meaningless as they will, still gives Eric Spoelstra a chance to get read. And I think what he said is spot on. It will be matchup based. Because if you're playing KD, you might need Caleb Martin to use all 5 of his fouls efficiently, as opposed to Duncan Robinson using all 5 of his fouls, maybe not efficiently.
By the way, Tyler Hero was close to a quadruple double, man.
I saw the 8 turnovers this morning, and I had harped so much on Vic's 5 first half turnovers. You know what? I'd rather it happens now and you clean it up. You know what? At least, Big O, it gives the Heat a place to look at tape and say what Toronto did.
It's nothing. It's not. It's just a night. Tyler Hero's been
it's a learning. I disagree with you. It's a learning experience. Toronto's a very good defensive team, and so if Toronto can,
he doesn't have 8 turnovers. This isn't. Tyler Hero's not a turnover-prone player. It's just
he had been, but he hasn't as much this year. I love when players can go to school on moments like that. I love when players maybe get humbled a little bit and said, "Okay, I can do this, this, and this, but I can't do that, that, and that." I'm fine with that. If you have tape to go to school on, it makes you a better player.
Yeah, but for me, that's just an aberration, what I saw last night. I can't, the kid's been terrific all year long.
Correct.
It's not a big deal. All right. The whole dust up. Is it water under the bridge? Is it something that they've forgotten? Is it something that meant nothing? Because like I was talking about this earlier, Ed Kaplan used to tell a story all the time about the old Knicks, 12 guys, 12 cabs, that they didn't really get along, those great Knicks teams of the early 70s. And you don't have to necessarily get along in order to win. So I'm just wondering, was it an aberration? Was it just something that happened in the moment? Is it something that they can cast aside, live with, play with, and then deal with at the end of the year? Or is it just something that didn't matter at all? How do you view it?
It's simply a matter of who Jimmy Butler is and who you got. He is an irrational son of a bitch, pain in the ass. But you knew that. And you know what? Going forward, he will be an irrational pain in the ass son of a bitch, because it's who he is. Everyone on the team knows that. That's Jimmy's prickly personality, but you win with it. So you move forward. Will there be another moment? Hell yeah, there'll be another moment. You know what? There were moments in the playoffs with Dwayne Wade. There were moments in the playoffs with Gary Payton. There's something to be said about those moments. It means that it means something to you, that it means that it's something that's visceral for you. There's nothing wrong with that. Erik Spoelstra managed it perfectly, and then he moved on, and then they won 4 in a row, and it'll happen again. I think if there's one thing that might have changed from that, it's that Udonis Haslem going into the huddle and yelling at veteran players, he might have realized a little bit, you know what? These guys are 30-somethings, whether it's Jimmy, whether it's Kyle, whether it's PJ. When the huddle is the younger players with Gabe and Max and Duncan and Caleb, that's a different story. So I think that might have been maybe the little bit of lesson that came out of that.
So it's a very, very interesting. All right. Do we know how long the coach is out?
Well, NBA protocols are 5 days unless you test your way out with consecutive days of negative tests. Look, this is a story that I wrote at the Sunset and I talked to you about. This sucks for this reason. Only when you play the Toronto Raptors in Toronto and the NBA do you have to test anymore. There's no more NBA testing unless you're symptomatic, like Goran Dragic was, and he's out now for the Nets. But in order to leave Canada to get back in the U.S., you must produce a viral COVID test within 24 hours. So the Heat all tested yesterday, and Erik Spoelstra's worst nightmare came true, apparently, unless it was a false negative. We'll find that out. And he tested positive. There only were 4 or 5 coaches who had yet to test positive this season. Erik Spoelstra took it down to the line, and then that happened. I would suspect, although I'm not sure, that he will miss Tuesday's home game against Charlotte and probably Friday's home game against Atlanta. But hell, they drenched Chris Quinn after the game last night. He got his first coaching win. It was the first time in the 4 games Erik Spoelstra missed since he took over in 2008 that the other coach, the fill-in, got a win. Dan Craig was 0-2. Now Chris is 1-1. And I like what Quinny said after the game, and it's true. And you know this. There's a culture and a way of doing things. Just because there's Chris Quinn or Malik Allen or Caron Butler or Anthony Carter or Octavio Delagrande in that huddle, they do what they do because they are who they are. And this wasn't like a family emergency where Erik Spoelstra the other time had to say, hey, family first, you're on your own. I'm sure he gave them a game plan. He talked to them. Who knows? He might have texted at halftime. You know, when you're vaccinated and you have COVID, you're sort of in quarantine, but you're not incapacitated. So I think there was plenty of communication. I'm sure also when we get the injury report today, no later than 5:30, Erik Spoelstra will look that over and say, you know what? Rest this guy, play that guy, and he'll take it from there. Erik Spoelstra will be back for the playoffs. That's all that really matters.
What do you got going on in the Sun Sentinel, my friend?
I did a breakdown of every possibility of the number 1 through number 4 seeds in the Eastern Conference. Again, if the Heat go 2-1, they are guaranteed of the number 1 seed. Most likely, if they even go 1-2, other teams would have to be perfect to leapfrog them. All of that said, the Heat can still play one of 6 different teams in the first round of the playoffs. It could be Brooklyn. It could be Charlotte. It could be Cleveland. It could be Atlanta. It could be Chicago. It could be Toronto. So I think the bigger story moving forward is not where the Heat fall, but against whom do they fall? And it's getting very tenuous with that Brooklyn possibility. But you know what, Big O? If they do finish number 10, where they are right now, they still will have to play, say, Atlanta in the first round. They could lose to Trae Young. They still would have to play Cleveland or Charlotte in the second round. For number 8, they could lose that. But if Brooklyn does not finish 7 or 8, they're locked into the play-in, and finishes 9 and 10, it'll either mean the number 8 seed or nothing for Brooklyn. So yeah, it possibly is looming. Heat against KD and Kyrie in the first round.
Doesn't matter. Life is good as long as LeBron is not in the playoffs. Oh, it's a beautiful thing to watch. And
it's just crazy.
Late. By the way, why doesn't the NBA have its own flex schedule thing?
Yes.
Like, what's the reason putting on the Lakers and the Mavs? I mean,
because people love to watch a crash and burn. They do, Big O. So
I know they like
Lakers against
I know that's why the
Suns
Kardashians have been on for 20 years. But
Lakers versus Suns, national TV on Tuesday. Lakers on national TV on Thursday. I'm still curious. I've been told, Big O, there will be playoffs this year. I'm not sure I believe that if the Knicks and Lakers aren't in them based on the regular season national schedule. So I think it might be, ladies and gentlemen, there's no Lakers, there's no Knicks. Have a good summer. We'll see you next fall. Because from what we've seen on national TV to what we're going to see next is going to be something far, far different.
Yeah. Well, the Knicks are what they are. They're back to normal again. That was abnormal last year.
You know what? They're still on national TV Thursday against the Nets. They still have a national game.
I know. It's so ridiculous. All right. Follow him on Twitter at Ira Heatbeat and catch him here 3 times a week, baby. He'll be back on Wednesday with the Slomin's look around the NBA, baby. Thank you as always, Ira. Appreciate you.
Talk to you Wednesday, and of course, talk to you again on Friday. Thank you, Big O.
Sir, there you go. And remember, on Wednesday, 9 a.m., Slomin's Inside the Paint, 9 a.m., Clay and Ira Inside the Paint, Slomin's Inside the Paint. There is Ira and your Heat information.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.